hello to everybody joining us today. It is my pleasure to moderate this exciting webinar, From Good to Great, the impact of the CRA certification on your career, where I do hope that everyone here will either be taking the CRA exam soon, or maybe if you've already earned the CRA, you might need a refresher on the benefits. But no matter what, we are here to set you up for success. If you do have questions, as was reiterated during the webinar, please use the Q&A box so we may address them during the Q&A portion. We do have a rich agenda to start us off on our journey learning about this invaluable certification. All right, we'll first start off with the introduction, meet the panelists, overview of the CRA, panel discussion on the CRA, and open Q&A about the CRA. So now I would love to welcome our expert panelists on the webinar. Allison DeVries, Manager of Research Development and Administration from Chapman University, Katy Gathron, Grant Program Manager from the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, Tyler Tulloch, Senior Consultant from Attain Partners, and Alyssa Livernois, me, the Research Coordinator from the College of Applied Arts at Texas State University. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you. All right. Just a quick question for our panelists. What is one thing that you are excited about for our attendees to get out of today's webinar? Anybody can answer.
Hi, Alyssa. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison DeVries. I'm happy to be here today. I'm really excited for our attendees to get a deeper understanding of the CRA certification process and its benefits. And I really hope everyone leaves with a clear roadmap on how to achieve this designation and feel inspired to advance their careers.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Katy Gathron, and I'm really excited to teach everyone about a lot of free resources that are available to utilize to take this exam. So a lot of stuff is free, so we're really excited about that and excited to share that with you.
Hi, Tyler Tulloch with Attain Partners. Just the biggest thing I'm excited to share is information on how, once you pass the exam, what you need to do to maintain that certification.
Thank you very much, everybody. I really do appreciate everybody's input. So now I'm going to pass it over to Allison, who will go over more detailed information about what the CRA is all about.
Thanks, Alyssa. So we wanted to start off just talking about what is the CRA and who offers that certification. So the Certified Research Administrator, CRA, is a designation granted by the Research Administrators Certification Council, RAC. It recognizes individuals who have demonstrated the necessary knowledge to be professional research or sponsored programs administrators. It's a mark of excellence in the field, ensuring that certified professionals have met rigorous standards of both knowledge and competency. To become certified, you must meet certain eligibility requirements and pass the CRA exam, which we will delve into on the next slides. So to be eligible for the CRA certification, candidates have to have a specific combination of educational and professional experience requirements. So if you have a bachelor's degree or an advanced degree, you need 3 years of professional experience in research administration or sponsored programs administration. If you have an associate's degree, you need 5 years of experience. And if you do not have a degree, you need 6 years of experience. There's also an option to petition a waiver for required experience if your level of education is not met. The certification process involves several steps. The first thing I recommend that people do is review the CRA handbook in its entirety. We're all very used to reading very long NOFOs, so just bunker down and read the whole thing. There's a lot of really useful information in there that'll guide you through the entire test-taking process. Next, you have to apply to take the exam. That includes a $395 application fee. My institution paid for that fee, so I would check with your supervisor and your institution to see if that's an available option for you as well. Once you're authorized, you can schedule your exam with Prometric. I recommend scheduling that as soon as you receive the authorization so you can receive your preferred testing location, date, and time. If you live somewhere that's a little more rural, your nearest testing center might be several hours away. I live in Southern California, but by the time I got my authorization, my closest testing center had 1 slot left. So I grabbed it so I could have my closest testing center and not have to drive too far. So once you decide to take the exam, come up with your plan to start studying and start reviewing that body of knowledge. You don't need to wait until you're authorized or have your test date to start studying. I would start doing that as soon as you know you're taking the exam. And then after you take that exam, it takes about a month from the close of the exam to receive your results. So everyone receives their results on the same day. If you take your exam at the beginning of the window, you'll probably wait about 6 weeks to receive those results. On this slide, we want to talk about what the CRA exam involves. So it's a 200 question multiple choice exam covering 4 different domains: collection and dissemination of information, legal requirements and sponsor interface, financial management, and general management. Of these questions, 175 will count toward your score, and there's 25 randomly distributed questions, so you won't know which ones they are pilot questions they're just testing out. Those ones do not count toward your score. Collection and dissemination is 44% of the exam. This section includes questions about communication, managing internal funding, limited submission programs, identifying and distributing funding opportunities, professional proposal development, review and submission, compliance, sub-recipients monitoring, and account management. This is the bulk of the exam, 44%. The next section is legal requirements and sponsor interface. This is about 20% of the exam. It focuses on things like research ethics, compliance, IRB, IACUC, radiation safety, biosafety, export controls, conflict of interest. It also looks at things like award negotiation and acceptance, award management, intellectual property, and tech transfer. The next section, which is about the same size, 21% of the exam, focuses on financial management. These are things like audit, compliance, cost share, financial reporting, F&A, and procurement. And finally, the last small section, 15% of the exam, focuses on general management. So these are things like human resources, professional development, institutional service, contracted services. So as you can see, it's a lot of information, and someone told me it's a mile wide, but only a few inches deep. So you just need to know a little bit about a lot of things. So more information about the breakdown of topics, including all of the details, is available in that candidate handbook, which I recommend that you read. The exam, you have 3.5 hours to take it. It's offered twice a year in May and November. So I did want to get a little bit into how these exams are administered. So they are administered at a testing center. So people at your testing center can be taking completely different exams. People at my testing center were taking the SAT. There are mechanics in there taking their kind of tests. So people might have different requirements for what they might be allowed to bring in, how long their exams are. Some people might have notes and their water bottle, where you might not be able to have those items. For the CRA, you're not allowed to bring any notes or materials into the exam room. The only exception is things you can bring in are a calculator and a sheet of scratch paper, which my testing center provided for me. You have to show valid ID and do things like empty your pockets, roll up your sleeves and pant legs to make sure you don't have any notes written or hidden flashcards. You do have to go through a metal detector or get wanded. I had to have my glasses inspected and my jewelry inspected to make sure there was nothing hidden there. So for me, knowing that in advance was really helpful, so I wasn't surprised on exam day. There are lockers outside where you can store purses, backpacks, your phone. I put a water bottle in there, a cup of coffee, some snacks, just in case. I didn't want my tummy to be rumbling or to feel like I needed a hit of caffeine and not have that available to me. There's no scheduled breaks, but you are allowed to leave that exam room to go to your locker to get access to any snacks, medications, things like that. Or if you need to leave to go to the restroom, that is always acceptable. But keep in mind, you do need to go back through the entire security process to return to the testing room. And then I did want to give a short little update on updates from RAC. As we all know, the uniform guidance was updated this year, pretty substantial updates. So RAC is going to wait until July 1st of 2025 to update all of their exams. So this includes the CRA, the topic of this discussion, but also their CFRA and CPRA to reflect the uniform guidance. So if you took the CRA in November of 2024 or plan to take it in May of 2025, those questions will be based on the previous uniform guidance. If you plan to take it starting in November of 2025, that will be on the most updated guidance. So now I'm going to pass it back to our moderator, Alyssa, who will guide us into some of the next topics.
Excellent, Allison. Thank you so much for discussing RAC, the eligibility criteria, the certification process, and truly what the breakdown of the CRA exam is. So now let's go to our next section, experiencing taking the CRA exam, where I'll invite all of our colleagues for a panelist perspective, an informal discussion of their CRA journey, what worked for them, and maybe perhaps what didn't work for them. So let me first ask Katy, your motivation. Why did you take the exam?
Thanks, Alyssa. So there's a couple reasons why I decided to take the exam. So the first reason is my institution actually offered certification pay on top of my base salary. So that was one of the main motivators for me. And then also, it was just something that I really wanted to achieve. I heard about it when I was pretty much brand new to research administration, and I'm an overachiever. So I definitely like, okay, this is a goal I want to set for myself. When I saw the 3 years that were required, I was like, okay, I'm going to wait 3 years. But then I ended up not doing that just because of all the experience and knowledge that I gained in a shorter period of time.
Perspective. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, for me, I think, I wanted to have a way to sort of independently test and verify my knowledge as I was coming up through the field of research administration. So, the CRA designation is the sort of premier avenue to do that unless you participate in, one of the master's programs or something like that. And I think the other piece of it was just having the respect of a national level certification that's been, verified and verified through the certification process at the nonprofit organization.
Alyssa?
Yeah, so my experience with wanting to take the exam is very similar to Katy and Tyler. I entered the field of research administration about 5 years ago. And from that point, I knew I wanted to take some kind of credential. I didn't know exactly what, but I did my research. And like Katy, quickly found like this is the gold standard of the exam to take. My supervisor was really supportive in all of our one-on-ones and goal setting meetings. She's like, when are you taking that exam? When are you eligible? And I think that was really helpful to push me through. And I do feel like it really validates like your commitment to the field and your expertise. It gives like that stamp of approval, like you know what you're talking about. And I think that's really helpful for me.
Really agree. And speaking from my own perspective, I personally will be taking the CRA, well, projected to take the CRA exam next May in 2025. So fingers crossed that everything goes good with that. And it really is great to be able to speak with somebody who's already gone through the whole process. But I would like to ask, specifically leading up to the process, the study time. I know that everybody has different study points, whether they can study for 5 minutes and master everything perfectly. And if you so, let me know how you do it. But if you need about 6 months or a year, how did you do it? What were your study strategies like? Tyler?
Yeah, so I'd say as an estimate, it took about 30 to 40 hours of study time over a 9-month period. I kind of took my time, spread it out. I actually participated in the Virginia Tech CRA study group twice, just to kind of give myself that confidence boost. Because, the first time I went through it, it certainly felt like a lot of information, some information overload. And I just wanted to be confident going into that exam, which kind of inspired me to sit through the Virginia Tech CRA study group twice.
The strategy to be able to take a whole year to do it, of taking it twice. I know that that's the strategy that I'm going to do personally. How about you, Allison?
So I studied about 70 hours, I think, and I think I crammed that all in about 12 weeks. I also participated in the Virginia Tech study team and the University of Michigan's AIM Higher program. So in those 70 hours, I'm including the about 3 hours per week that I was participating in those programs, and then things outside. And I think the reason I studied so much is I support a college of arts, humanities, and social sciences. So I had never done things like IACUC and radiation and biosafety. So I needed to educate myself a little bit more on those things that aren't necessarily things I do in my day-to-day life. And it was really easy to kind of separate out, okay, these things I got it. Proposal development, I know how to do these things, and spend a lot more time on the things I don't do in my day-to-day. So yeah, I'd say about 70 hours crammed into 12 weeks.
Perfect, and really relates to what I'm doing right now. My focus is pre-award in my day-to-day, so I really need to amp up my studying with contract negotiation, IACUC, IRB, and those particular processes. It really is being able to enrich what you don't know and what you don't normally do on the day-to-day. But what about you, Katie?
So I'm kind of the oddball out. I have a pretty heavy science background, and when I first started studying for this exam, because it's a lot of information and facts, and it's not a lot of numbers, it's not a lot of math and science. So for me, I was really kind of just struggling with how to study. I started out taking the UT Austin class and also kind of the Virginia Tech class, but those coincided with work meetings and different things going on. So I actually did end up taking this test twice. So the first time I was really trying to do Virginia Tech and UT Austin and utilize their resources, but it was a really, really busy time at work. And personally, I had a lot going on. So when I first took the exam, I tried to do those things, but I really didn't have a lot of time to study. And I was not successful, but I was very close to being successful without studying. So the second time I decided to take the exam, I wanted to do something different. So I actually did the Texas A&M free CRA prep class, but once again, it coincided with meetings. So I had to kind of dwindle it down and do things on my own time from the recordings and the resources that were available. So I would say that I probably spent about 5 weeks going through everything. So all of their exams, all of their sessions, practice exams, and other resources. So I'm probably close to about what Allison said. It was probably about 70 hours, including going through all of those sessions over about a 5 week period of time. And that ended up working for me. I knew that trying to do this over a really long period of time was not going to work for me just because of all the ebbs and flows that happen with our jobs. So I knew I was going to have to condense things and really buckle down to be able to be successful.
It's fantastic, and absolutely congratulations on your success story. Everybody loves a great success story. It truly is a balance with every one of us that has our typical day jobs to be able to find the time to adequately study, because before our jobs or at the end of the day, who really wants to study at the end of the day? So it really is a delicate balance to being able to find our own time to get that motivation. Hey, I need to study for this because it will absolutely pay dividends when I get that certification. But with everybody already exploring your exam study tips as far as approaching taking the exam, are there any other tips that you would like to share as far as that avenue? What do you think, Alice?
Yeah, I'll add in a few. I mean, I think the last time I took a standardized test was like the SAT when I was applying for college. So I think training my brain again to be able to take a standardized test was different, right? And trying to figure that out. So like I said, I participated in the Virginia Tech study team and the University of Michigan's Aim Higher program. I thought that was really helpful to kind of understand exactly what the body of knowledge meant when they said certain things. So when you start to read it, you're like, what do they mean? What exactly do I need to study to learn these topics? Virginia Tech also does the CRA a day email, and all of these resources are free. So like Tyler said, that's like a ton of free, was that Tyler? So a ton of free resources. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do this, which is really helpful. But the CRA a day email that came out was a nice daily reminder to be like, oh yes, I need to study today, or a little bit each day. And their CRA a day tips are 1 to 2 pages of information. So quick, easy to digest points, just to make sure you're continuing to do it. I also made myself a little calendar, super simple in Excel with like the days and general topics I wanted to study that day. So like today I want to study IACUC. Tomorrow I want to study audit things. And I thought that was really helpful to kind of set my schedule Monday through Friday. And when things came up, then I knew I'd have to spend that time on Saturday or Sunday. But I think what was most helpful is my grandma ended up in the hospital like 3 weeks before the exam, and I knew I had to keep studying. So when I was in the waiting room, I could just be there and be like, okay, I know I want to study this today without really having to put too much brain power into what I had to study. For me, having a calendar and a schedule was really good to kind of keep me on track to study the things I knew I needed to before the exam. And then the last thing I did is I used Quizlet for practice questions. I thought that was really helpful to just kind of do some self-quizzing and things like that. Oh, and I also took the RAC practice exam, which is available through the RAC website. It's $60 and it's a shorter exam. It's less questions. But again, my institution paid for it, and I thought that was really good just to get familiar with the testing format. It looks very similar to the way it will be on the computer in the testing center. So I took that as like let me sit down, not have any meetings and just take this time to figure out how fast I'm able to get through the questions and things like that.
Perspective. And when you mentioned institutional support, I really do feel like that's an extra boost that not only do you want to do this for yourself, but your institution wants to be able to see you succeed. I think that's a fantastic approach. If anybody has that opportunity, please reach out to your institution to see if you do have that support. But what about you, Katie? Do you have any exam study tips?
Sure. So I would kind of agree with Allison. You definitely need to make a schedule for yourself, but you also need to be realistic. I think that we all have a lot going on personally, professionally. So on some days, I would feel bad, like if I couldn't study and I chose to do something else, or if I didn't feel well. But you just kind of have to give yourself that grace and also just be realistic. We're still human beings. And if you don't study for one day, it's not going to be an end all be all. So definitely give yourself grace and be realistic. Also, talk to your supervisor or talk to people in your department or other people at your institution that may have the certification, just kind of trying to see what support is available to you. Because sometimes if your institution or your department is invested in this with you, they'll say, okay, you can study for an hour a day. Or if you tell them, hey, I'm going to take this course, it's at this time, then they may excuse you from some meetings or something like that, just to give you that time during the day, because a lot of these prep classes are during the day, during work hours. So you definitely want to involve your leadership and just take advantage of the resources that you have. One thing I will say that was different about the A&M class versus UT Austin and Virginia Tech, A&M provides a very comprehensive study guide for the entire body of knowledge, as well as the NIH, as well as NSF. So they provide a very comprehensive and thorough study guide basically for the entire exam and the major sponsors. So I would say that I know is one of the reasons why I passed. And even if you choose not to do the A&M course, you can still reach out about getting some of those resources from them just to have an additional study tool. So I would say just use your resources wisely, tap into the different study groups that are available and see what works for you, because one format may not work as well for you. So the resources are free. So you might as well sign up, see what works for you, see what times work for you, see what learning strategies or how they present the information. And if that works for you, and then just make your decision that way.
Excellent point of being able to utilize more than one study course if you're able to dedicate the time to do it. I know for me, for the past fall semester, I was able to dedicate some time for 2 CRA study courses. And even though their agendas were almost exactly the same, it was extremely beneficial to see perspectives and guest speakers who were from different universities talking about the same topics, but I was able to digest in different perspectives, I suppose, especially with talking about compliance in one aspect, somebody else in a different institution also talking about compliance may have said something I wouldn't have considered, or it just didn't digest properly with one person versus another. So I definitely do recommend a minimum of 2 if you do have the time for it. It's incredibly essential. How about you, Tyler? Do you have any exam study tips to share?
Yeah, so I think if you are going to participate in one of those live study groups, whether that's Virginia Tech, University of Michigan, or maybe your institution has one, if you have your leadership support, your manager support, make sure that you block that time off on your calendar and be strict with yourself to prioritize that. Try to avoid moving that or removing that from your calendar in place of another meeting if you can, because again, your professional development is critically important, not just to yourself, but to your institution and for you to be able to better serve, the PIs and whomever else you work with. I think another aspect or study tip I would advise is, looking over that CRA body of knowledge kind of highlighting or identify areas maybe that you're not as familiar with. So again, if you mostly work in pre-award, right, you're going to need to study more on the post-award side and vice versa. That allows you just to kind of really target those areas where maybe you have less experience. And again, you don't have to sit there and comb over everything in pre-award because, again, you should be confident in the skill and experience that you've developed in your time as a research administrator already. Lastly, again, I'll also vouch for the Quizlet flashcards. I think that was, I would attribute probably most of my success to the Quizlet flashcards. I think that's just been a key study habit of mine throughout my educational career. But make sure that you use the most recent and up-to-date CRA flashcards because there are a lot. Not, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are a number of CRA flashcards on Quizlet. I think the one that is most up to date is the largest flashcard set. And we can probably get a link out to that for the group so you actually have that specific resource.
Great suggestion of being able to use Quizlet. That's exactly what I used to be able to supplement my studying habits, my studying tips during my college career as well. And it really does help being able to see everybody else who has made these sets, being able to put in certain information, or if it's just studying acronyms, because we do know this entire field just absolutely loves acronyms. So a little bit goes a long way when it comes to studying, even if it's just quick study card, or if you're a little bit old school and want to make the actual study cards, then I know that for the body of knowledge, if we're making study flashcards, the stack can be easily this big. So I know that that's going to be an incredibly useful source, no matter what you're doing as Quizlet. All right, so it was fantastic to hear everybody's personal stories about experiences taking the CRA exam. But before we transition, I wanted to ask everybody's personal overall experience from beginning to end as far as your feelings went from it. Did you go from nervous to excited to determined? Or how did you feel about the whole thing? Katy?
Yeah, so I would say that since I'd already gone through it before, it was more so, okay, I know I need to devote the time to this, and if I do, I'll be successful. So I definitely went from, I would say I went from motivated because I almost passed the exam without studying, which is crazy. So so it was like, okay, this is crazy. I need to devote some time. So I definitely went from motivated to excited. And then when I left the exam, I knew I passed the exam. This is one of those tests where you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know. So when you leave that exam and you know that you got the majority of the questions correct, you weren't second guessing yourself, you weren't flagging a bunch of stuff, you weren't guessing, then you're going to know you did well, which was kind of great. It was like, okay, I'm just waiting on you guys to send me my letter. So I would say my overall experience was pretty great. Like Allison touched on with the testing centers, it's kind of annoying, but you need to wear things accordingly. Like if you wear a jacket, you can't take the jacket off. Well, you can, but it has to be when you leave. There's a lot of random stipulations. So just really read that information so you can be prepared ahead of time. Can't wear a watch, can't wear certain jewelry. So just pay attention to those things because you don't want to get hung up. But I would say it was a pretty great experience. And I would do it again, but I wouldn't.
Taking the exam multiple times in a week doesn't sound at the top of my to-do list either. So it's a one and done, hopefully for me. But how do you think, Tyler? What was your personal experience like as far as how you felt about it?
Yeah, I don't think I had the same experience as Katy in terms of after taking the test. I think I was the most nervous waiting for the results. I think it's just maybe a personal habit of mine of second guessing myself, I suppose. And so yeah, that month, that 6 weeks that we had to wait for the exam results, I was, pretty nervous and thinking, all right, well, I'll start studying again and prepare to take the test again if I have to. But thankfully, I was able to pass it on the first go around. And I think that was really uh, it was inspired by having a great supervisor and institution that had my back and allowed me to participate in those study groups during the workday as part of my professional development. The other thing I would advise, if you have the available leave time, take the day off before the exam so you have some just additional time to review everything, get everything into place. If you do have to travel, a little ways, maybe you stay the night prior to the exam just so you're settled in, and you can get everything into order. Like Katy and Allison have mentioned, there are a lot of rules at the testing center. So just making sure you have all of those things in place so you don't have to stress about those the morning of is critical, and just helps you go into that test with a lower stress level, especially if you do maybe have a little bit of test anxiety. And then again, after the exam, make sure you have the rest of the day off so you can kind of decompress and celebrate your accomplishment, because it is an accomplishment of you making it that far and signing up for the exam.
Great. Taking a little bit of time for investing in your success by making it as easy as possible for you to take the exam is as crucial as your decompression time afterwards too. You want to make sure that you reflect on yourself. I know I did the best job I absolutely could. How about you, Allison? What did you feel about the whole thing?
I completely agree with everything that Katy and Tyler said. I took the rest of the day off, took myself out to like a nice lunch afterwards, allowed my brain to decompress. There's no way I could have returned to a normal work day. I'd say after the exam, I was very much in between Katy and Tyler. Like I felt confident, but like cautiously optimistic, and was just really hoping that I would get the pass when I got the results. One thing I did before I left the testing center is I went through like all 200 questions. I used my scratch paper to make little tallies of, okay, I know I'm 100% confident about these ones. These are the ones I took an educated guess on. And then there were like 5 or 6 questions. I was like, I have no idea what this is. I've never seen this before in my entire life. But I felt pretty good that out of 200 questions, there were only 5 where I was like, I have absolutely no idea. So I walked out of the testing center feeling cautiously optimistic that I had passed and all of that. But yeah, like both Katy and Tyler said, make sure you read what the rules are for your testing center. Wear comfortable clothes. I wore leggings with like a very tight ankle, and they made me pull up the pant leg. In retrospect, I probably would have worn like a jogger or sweatpants, something just very loose, very comfortable. I had planned in my head to take a break every 50 questions, just like get up, move my body, get some fresh air. But after the first time, it took like 6 or 7 minutes to return to the testing room to re-go through that security process. I was like, ooh, the clock doesn't stop. I don't have enough time to take that many breaks. I think I ended up taking 2 breaks just to like get up, walk around, not be staring at that computer. So I think just knowing that in advance was really helpful. And like I said, I left snacks in a water bottle and a cup of coffee and a thermos in my locker just in case. I didn't need any of that, but just knowing it was there just in case kind of was giving me a little reassurance and helping a little bit with some of that test anxiety, at least giving me a variable that I could control. But overall, very happy that I took the exam and passed it, and now I'm a CRA.
And the biggest tip that I heard from that is always have some backup or emergency caffeine with you. So with everybody's personal stories now in the bag, from your personal experience taking the exam, let's next talk about the benefits of the CRA certification, our success stories. Now I would like to pass this off to Tyler.
All right. Thanks so much, Alyssa. So, some of the success stories that I'll talk about relate to professional recognition, career advancement, and higher earning potential. I think first and foremost, as we had kind of already talked about, there is some level of prestige and respect around the CRA designation, because it provides a comprehensive review of the research administration body of knowledge. And then again, there is some respect about that because the Research Administrative Council certification, or Certification Council, excuse me, it is made up of volunteers with a diverse background of experience who come together and put together, the best questions to test people's knowledge of this. And there's the other aspect of this being that there is a requirement for verifiable ongoing professional development. And so that means, you have, should you be selected for audit of your continuing education credits or your contact hours, you have to be able to produce that information. And again, we'll get into that a little bit later, but there is that sort of level of confidence that, we're not just taking a really easy exam just to get those 3 letters by our name. It is a detailed, comprehensive assessment of our research administration knowledge. And the other sort of aspect of it being respected is that it is reliant on a third-party professional testing service. And so as Allison and Katy have already mentioned, there are a lot of specific rules and requirements to even get into the testing center, right? Because they don't want to make sure that people aren't cheating during these exams. So it's taken very seriously. But one of the biggest aspects of what this is looking at, right, is that in reality, our individual institutions operate under their own specific systems, institutional policies, and state laws and regulations. And so what the CRA exam does is sort of level the playing field. All right, it is a mechanism to standardize the field's body of knowledge across states, across institutions. And so that way you can take that CRA and demonstrate your knowledge across any state. And so I think that's one of the huge benefits and avenues of having that level of respect. And with that comes career advancement, right? So if you want to move to a more senior level position, you want to move into a management position, having the CRA will certainly set you apart. And again, it demonstrates your dedication to the field, but also demonstrates your competency in the field. And then again, with moving up to those senior positions or management positions, you're very likely to get a salary increase associated with that. And oftentimes, if you're trying to move up in your organization, you may have to look elsewhere to potentially get a retention offer. And so again, that can be a good opportunity for negotiation leverage. And I think the CRA is very easily the most likely thing to get your foot in the door at almost any research institution is when those three letters are by your name or the certified research administrator certification is in your resume. That is very likely to get your foot in the door to an interview at minimum. And I'll pass this over to my co-presenter, Katy, to talk about her success stories.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. So yeah, all the things that he already said are very true. So I'm just going to kind of go over what type of job security you have, personal satisfaction that we all talked about since we all are CRA certified, and credibility, and then you're seen potentially as a role model. So this kind of goes alongside with what Tyler was talking about, but having CRA definitely does help you with job security. It really helps to have that certification. Departments want their research administrators to have this certification because it makes them look good. But also it also shows that the people that are working with them and for them do know the information that Tyler mentioned. So we know this information and it's widely applicable across the US, sometimes internationally, depending on your institution. So this is definitely something that provides job security because it is in high demand. This field is growing, and people really aren't going to want to get rid of people that have CRAs unless you just really aren't doing your work. So do your work. And then also when you're looking for new jobs or even just trying to move up that career ladder, CRA certification is seen a lot in different job postings or just that next level up from where you currently are. So definitely that certification will open those doors for you. And then personal satisfaction. So as we all have kind of said, like this is a big deal. Like this is a big deal when you achieve this. This is not a super easy exam. It's not a short exam. It takes up a lot of time, a lot of your personal time, a lot of professional time for you to achieve this designation. So it's definitely a significant professional milestone. And then it also provides you with validation. So it validates all that hard work and effort that you've put into your job and also to obtain this certification. And it also just kind of enhances you to have that confidence in your abilities. And then it also makes you credible. So that's one thing that I've really, really liked, probably almost the most about going through this process and obtaining this certification, because this knowledge, this time that you study and prepare, this knowledge stays with you. And what I'll say for myself is this is one of the first times that when prepping for a major standardized exam, the knowledge actually stuck with me after the exam. So that's one thing that I really liked about it, because I'm like, man, like I'm remembering these things from when I was studying 6 months ago for this exam. And it makes you credible because you can pull on that knowledge when you're having certain conversations with leadership or your manager or other colleagues. And it makes it seem like you know what you're talking about because you have that certification, but you also have the credibility because you have the knowledge that came with it. And it also is just something that is an achievement that people recognize, and they might ask you questions. Okay, how did you obtain this? I've been wanting to do this. What did you do? So it's definitely something that enhances your credibility. It makes people trust you more. Some of your faculty, it makes new employers or old employers feel a little bit better. Okay, they actually know this stuff. So I would feel confident giving them more responsibilities or having them take on new things because they do have that knowledge to back it up. And then it makes you also reliable. So, like I kind of already mentioned, you have that trust, but it also makes you reliable within your organization. People know that you know what you're talking about. And then, like I kind of said earlier, so role model. So you can serve as a role model and you can mentor others in the research administration community. So at the most recent annual meeting, I was at some of the young professionals events. I think it was maybe the a networking mixer or something like that. And I was kind of just talking to people about my CRA experience. I had just recently obtained the certification and was talking to them about it. And a lot of people are very intimidated by the exam, which I'll go into a little later, but there are a lot of really intimidated and don't think they have the time to do it. So people don't do it because they're like, man, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't know if I can do this. So you definitely serve as a role model and you can inspire others to take the exam. And then also, this can help you develop leadership skills, mentoring roles. So sometimes people just want to know what you did or they want your help. And I actually helped one of my friends recently, and my mom actually, who also works in research administration, come up with a study plan and kind of what to do based on what I did, so that they could prep for the exam. And they'll know soon if they pass. So I'll see if my methods are great after they let me know if they pass soon. But you definitely serve as a role model for other people, and they'll come to you and ask you questions, or you can help them out when they get stuck and stuff like that. So now I will pass it on to Alyssa, our moderator.
Very excellent. Thank you so much, Katie, for providing all of that valuable information. And one thing I also wanted to mention too was it was mentioned earlier by Allison, and I think it was also mentioned by Mr. Jeffrey Ritchie from Hamilton College that our entire field is a mile wide, but only a few inches deep. So when you do get that sort of CRA certification and you do come across a situation with a faculty member or a staff, and you're thinking, oh, I know I studied that somewhere, but because I studied for the CRA certification, I know exactly where to go find out either in my notes or with my colleagues, or maybe even just being able to find it out on your own time just by simple deduction of post-award. Oh, I know how to do this, but because I have the CRA certification, I realize that's what it needs to be. All right, so now with our next slide, how the CRA certification helps in daily work. I would like to invite the panelists to discuss the bullet points we have in front of you, first starting with regulations and compliance. Tyler?
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa. So, first, regulation and compliance, right? The test really validates your level of knowledge regarding both pre-award and post-award research compliance requirements. It equips you with the in-depth knowledge of federal and institutional regulations, making it easier to ensure all research projects are compliant. This is probably the most important aspect of research administration, in my opinion, ensuring proposals and to ensure that proposals and projects are compliant is critically important to institutional success and reputation. From the pre-award perspective, right, you don't want to be the one responsible for submitting a proposal that isn't even reviewed because you missed a critical element of that proposal that the sponsor required. So ensuring that you're familiar with those requirements is going to, again, kind of going back with that respect of colleagues, respect of the PIs, make sure that you have that and can maintain that. On the post-award side of things, making sure that we're spending the funds on allowable uses, making sure that all aspects of research compliance are met. So IRB, IACUC, and, you know, if the research project is involving animals, making sure that the PI has gone through the appropriate steps to get that reviewed and approved by the IACUC. If the PI is using hazardous materials, making sure that you're going through the institutional biosafety committee. All of those are absolutely critical, because at the end of the day, if you're in the field long enough, and maybe even your first year, as was my experience, you're going to have a project that gets audited. Maybe it's by your state auditors, maybe it's by the Office of Inspector General for the respective sponsor. But we want to try to avoid audit findings as much as possible. And, you know, your knowledge and experience and understanding of sponsored project regulation and compliance is critical to that. What may be the second most important, I would say, is budget management. So again, making sure that you know how funds can be spent, knowing the impact of changes to a PI spending plan, as well as the impact of your sort of institutional inflationary changes. So, you know, salaries may change depending on how salaries are negotiated within your state, especially if you're a public institution. Are there contractual increases that you have to factor in? Are there maybe some unknowns that you have to anticipate in terms of higher salary increases for faculty, making sure that we can retain those talented researchers at the institutions versus losing them to other higher paying institutions? So trying to kind of be tell the future in a way is a valuable asset in budget management, because you can kind of anticipate, or at least think about, different contingency scenarios as spending plans change, especially throughout the life of, you know, a 4 to 5 year project. The other aspect is streamlined processes. So the certification teaches best practices and standardized procedures, which can help you streamline your daily workflows. And I think this is valuable in the sense that by the CRA covering all aspects of the field of research administration, again, research development, pre-award, post-award, research compliance, etc., you're better equipped to understand the intersections of all of those different areas and how your institutional systems and policies can be improved to better serve the research ecosystem at your respective institutions. And lastly, problem solving, which, if you work in research administration, that is probably your primary job task, is problem solving. With a comprehensive understanding of research administration, you'll be better equipped to troubleshoot and resolve issues quickly. You'll have the know-how to approach any sponsor or situation and resolve problems and address questions, or know where to look for information. Because as we all know, even the most experienced research administrators don't have everything memorized, but they know where to look. And so that is probably one of the most critical skill sets that you can develop as a research administrator, is knowing where to look for information when you get a question that maybe you don't know the answer to. And I'll pass it on to Allison to talk about how it helps in her daily work.
Thanks, Tyler. I completely agree with everything you said. I was just like nodding my head, like, yes, it helps with that. And I completely agree. So I'm going to talk about, it helps me with stakeholder engagement. So with all of those relevant stakeholders, when I'm talking to researchers, to faculty, to funding agencies, I feel like it's helped me foster better collaboration, given me like kind of that skill set for building and maintaining strong professional relationships. Next, I feel like it's really helped with reporting skills. So taking some of these complex data sets and simplifying them for our dean, for the provost, for the VP of research, and saying, these are some things that I want to hit on, but synthesizing that data in a way that makes it accessible and understandable to non-experts, ensuring, going back to my stakeholders, that all of those stakeholders feel well informed and can make data-driven decisions. Our provost is super data-driven, so giving her information about our research in a way that makes sense to her is really important at my institution, and I feel like getting the CRA has equipped me with those skills. It's also helped me to make better informed decisions. So it's increased my knowledge of those research administration principles, the mile wide and inches deep, but I think it's by having that knowledge, I can make better informed decisions about the types of opportunities we will go for. Like Tyler mentioned with regulations and compliance, I can make really quick decisions and feel informed and confident in those decisions. And finally, the leadership, like Katie was talking about, being confident in taking on leadership and mentorship roles. I feel like I'm more effective leader and I have a better ability to contribute to professional growth of my colleagues, which is really uplifting. It's almost like a pay it forward moment to be able to say, I took this exam and I want other people to have that opportunity as well. I'm going to pass it off to Katie to close us out on this slide with the remaining bullet points.
Thanks, Allison. So yeah, I definitely agree with both you and Tyler. This helps in a lot of different ways. But as Tyler will mention a little bit later, this is something that you're going to be continually learning from. So once you obtain the certification, you do have to maintain that by doing continuing education activities, attending things at your institution, attending conferences, presenting at conferences, presenting at a webinar like we are right now. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can maintain that certification, but also this is going to make you have to stay up to date on trends and changes in the field. As Allison mentioned earlier, there were some changes to uniform guidance that take effect for some people this year for the exam, but just in general, some people this year are affected by it at their institution, and then some people will be affected more by it next year. But you have to stay up to date on what's going on in the field. And then this will also help you with networking opportunities. So all of you here probably members of NCURA, so you are familiar with networking opportunities, but this is a new opportunity. There is a directory of certified professionals that have this designation, and you can reach out to different people within your institution, outside of your institution. People may find you on LinkedIn as soon as you post it on your LinkedIn, just because it is highly sought after, but also just it's highly recognized and people want to network with other like-minded individuals with the same certifications. Also just the sense of achievement that you're going to have. It's a sense of accomplishment, and it'll potentially lead to greater job satisfaction and personal fulfillment. I'll say that I did switch jobs after I obtained the certification, and that has led to greater job satisfaction in my new role that is in a higher level that I was in previously. And I do feel a lot more fulfilled because it's kind of a role where I'm culminating all the experiences I've had so far and being able to use the different tools that I've learned in my almost 4 years in the field to kind of put into a new role. And then recognition. So a lot of times, like institutions, depending on how they communicate information, it may come out in a bulletin, or if you have, say, communities of practice for your research administration, they might send a bullet, like something out about newly certified research administrators. And I actually am in NCURA Region 5, and they asked if anybody had been certified in the last year since our last annual meeting. And I was the only person that stood up in the room. And it was actually shocking to me because in a room of almost 200 people or more, I was the only person that had obtained the certification in the past year. So that was kind of striking, but also it made people walk up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, congratulations, we're so proud of you," and didn't even know me. But it was just really striking that this isn't something that a lot of people pursue or that they pass in a certain time frame. I definitely thought the numbers would be higher. But just getting that recognition, I'm a words of affirmation person. So I like receiving praise and I like hearing people congratulate me on things. So that can, for me, because that's something that I like, it does contribute to a positive work environment as well. And I will pass this on to Alyssa.
Thank you so much, Katie. The recognition, I definitely agree, is a definite dopamine increase. Everyone had such a great additions to each of these bullet points. Now to discuss what many of us may experience with such a daunting test, the overcoming the fear of the CRA exam. And we all know with fear, the instant moment we think about this as we're driving to or traveling to our exam is, oh my gosh, will I pass? Or if you've left the exam, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I did not pass. So let me pass this on over to Katie for her explanation.
All right. So as Alyssa mentioned, I'll be going over overcoming the fear of the CRA exam. So as I mentioned earlier, I'd met some people at the Young Professionals Mixer, and a lot of people are just very apprehensive or scared of taking the exam. And after talking to a couple of people about my experience, they're like, man, okay, I think I can do this. Let me tap into these resources and see how I can make this happen, because it doesn't seem as scary after talking to you. So first, you kind of want to understand the exam structure, which Allison mentioned earlier. So you want to know the format, you want to know the content, you want to know the types of questions. And this will definitely help kind of alleviate some of that anxiety and the uncertainty with the material. But also just know that if you are not feeling very confident on certain information, you're testing yourself, you're doing all the things that you need to do, it's okay. You can reschedule the exam for a later date if you need to. So don't feel like just because you paid to take it, you have to take it. If you're not confident and you're really still struggling with quite a bit of that information, you can always push your exam to the next testing window just to give yourself some more time. And that'll definitely help alleviate anxiety as well, because you don't want to feel like you're forced to do something. This is something that you're paying for, potentially your institution is paying for, but you really just want to make sure that you feel confident and prepared enough to take the exam. But if you don't, you have more time. You can still push it out and feel better about it for yourself. Also, you want to create a plan. So whether that's going through a prep course, or if you just want to do self-study or talk to people at your institution, or you really just want to create a plan and you want to make sure that you are devoting enough time to that plan. All of us learn differently. All of us have different study techniques that work. Some of the things you did in college or graduate school may not work for this exam. So you really just need to know yourself and create a realistic plan that works for you, works for your schedule, works with your personal and professional things that you have going on. And you want to break down that material in the plan into manageable chunks, because you don't want to say, okay, I'm going to study for this in a week. It's not going to happen. It's not doable. You're not going to do well. It's just not. So you need to be very realistic when you set those goals. And then taking practice exams. So I think all of us kind of mentioned that we utilize different resources to test ourselves, whether that's Quizlet or free practice exams that are available, or you may make some things for yourself. You may make your own quizzes or tests to kind of test yourself over the information. So that definitely will help you get more confident and build that confidence leading up to the exam. And then join a study group. We all emphasize different things. Allison and Tyler both did Virginia Tech. I briefly did Virginia Tech. Allison also mentioned, I think, the University of Michigan's prep course as well. I mentioned UT Austin. There's Texas A&M. Your institution may have something. So joining with a study group definitely is very helpful. And CURA also has a CRA community. So you can also join that, and you could study with some people through there and see what they're doing, or just kind of bounce ideas off each other, or set aside dedicated time to kind of meet with people to go over the information. Because if you're all going through it and you're testing each other and talking to each other about it, a lot of times they do say the best way to know you know something is by teaching someone else or presenting it to someone else, because that's reinforcing the knowledge that you have. So joining a study group, and even just making those smaller groups, could be very, very beneficial. And then seek professional help. So if you're really just struggling, or you have some issues, or you really don't even know where to get started because you don't know how you learn or how you're going to get this information down, you could work with a tutor. There might be somebody that could help you with developing a study schedule, or developing better test taking strategies, just so that when you're preparing, you really know what does and doesn't work for you. And if you really truly have severe anxiety for testing, there are test accommodations available in this exam. So on page 10 of the CRA candidate handbook, there is information on how to submit documentation to allow yourself to have additional testing time, a controlled test environment. If you've ever had any test accommodations in the past, that type of documentation can be submitted as well. So if you really do need a controlled environment or you need more time for various reasons, whether medical or not, this exam does also offer those accommodations. So if you need them, they're available. You just have to make sure that you follow the instructions in the candidate handbook in terms of timing, because if you don't file that information in time, then you may not be able to get those accommodations for the test window that you select. And then stay healthy. So, I mean, everybody knows a good diet, exercise are good for you, and also enough sleep. So if you're falling asleep studying, or it's really, really late and you know that you cannot study really, really late, stop studying and wait till the next day, because you're really not going to retain that information if you're sleep deprived or if you're just like out of it. So you really just need to make sure that you're studying during times that are the best for you, your prime study times. And it's okay to wait until the next day, because you don't want to waste 3 hours staring at a screen where you didn't retain anything. And then the next day you're mad that you stayed up late. Now you're tired and you didn't retain that information, and now you have to go back over it. So definitely make sure you get enough sleep. Make sure that you exercise or do something to kind of alleviate stress if you don't exercise. And then you're eating brain healthy and healthy foods to kind of fuel yourself appropriately while you're going through this preparation. And then relaxation techniques. So, I mean, you can do yoga. There's quick little meditations you can do, and deep breathing. So even if you're in the exam and you're getting overwhelmed, or you're looking at the clock and you're freaking out because you're like, man, I'm only halfway through and I only have an hour and a half left. Okay, breathe. That might be a time where you need to take a little quick break. Even though it's gonna be about 6 minutes or so to get back in, you might just need to get up and take a breath, go to the bathroom, get a snack, and go back in, because sometimes you're just gonna fluster yourself and then you can't focus after that. So just use those tools when you're studying and even during the exam to kind of help yourself get through it, because you don't want to be flustered, because if you're flustered, your brain's on something else and you're not going to be focused on the exam. And then also just positive visualization. So you definitely want to think positively throughout the process, especially the closer you get to it. You've put in the time and effort, you've worked hard. So think about what's next. Think about, okay, I'm going to pass this exam, I'm going to get through this. And the more you think positively, that can actually affect your outcomes. If you're going in, you're thinking negatively, man, I didn't study enough, man, I didn't do this, oh, I didn't do this, then that could actually negatively impact your exam, because you had all these negative thoughts in your head before you even went in. So try to think positively and clear your brain and just focus. And then, as I mentioned earlier, don't be ashamed or afraid if you have to take the exam again. I had to do that, and I'm not ashamed one bit, but I know I had to take it again. I didn't study the first time, and you can't do that. So, so let me be your example. Do not study and try to take the exam. You definitely need to study and take advantage of some resources so that you can be successful. And now I'm going to pass it over to Tyler, who will cover our next topic.
Thanks, Katie. So after you all have passed the CRA, you're going to have to start focusing on the recertification process. So good news for people who are taking the test now or will be in the near future, you're going to have less contact hours. So for those of us, for anyone on the call, including myself, who are up for recertification in 2025, we still have to submit 80 required contact hours. But for all of those who have not taken the test or have recently taken the test, your contact hours are 42 contact hours. Now, how can you earn contact hours? So we've provided a link here, but I'll just kind of go through a quick summary of all the ways that you can earn contact hours. And, overall, it's pretty easy. And frankly, you could probably earn all of your contact hours for free. First and foremost, you can participate in research administration related professional development meetings, programs, courses, or activities. That can include NCURA webinars, webinars hosted by SRAI. There's also the Public Responsibility in Medicine and Research organization that you can participate in their professional development opportunities. There's the Office of Lab Animal Welfare, any of the NIH or NSF grants conferences that are available online for free. Again, those are all avenues for which you can easily earn contact hours. You can also prepare and present presentations or workshops on research administration related topics at an in-person meeting or in a webinar. So myself, Katy, Allison, and Alyssa, we can all earn contact hours for what we're doing today. So again, if you're involved in a research administration organization, you can be earning contact hours for the ways that you're involved. You can write research administration related articles for publication or prepare and submit an abstract, paper, or poster to a professional organization. So again, they're both of the major research admin organizations have avenues for online publication, NCURA Magazine, the SRAI Catalyst, ways that you can, again, demonstrate your knowledge and share information or share insights. You can serve as a PI or co-PI on a grant. So, again, you can get that experience that you subject your PIs to on a regular basis. Could be fun, could be interesting, and kind of help you glean some new information or insights into navigating the management of a grant. You can attend research administration related webinars or online courses. You can serve on research administration related committees or boards. Some of the more involved, but could be important to your institutions or, provide interesting insights as you navigate the research administration field, is that you can prepare written program reviews of a research administration operation external to your institution. That could be perhaps useful in a sense of if you're participating in one of the research administration graduate programs. You can participate in a site visit or program review external to your institution. You can attend classes or complete a graduate level certification program in research administration. And lastly, but not, this isn't an end all be all list. So if you have something that you believe qualifies for contact hours and you don't think it fits into one of these categories, just reach out to the RACC and, I'm sure they would be able to provide some input on whether something qualifies as contact hours. But the last thing is you can participate in your institution-wide committee on research administration related topic at your institution. So all of those are various ways that you can earn contact hours. In that link provided, there are some limits on number of contact hours you can earn in each of these categories. So just make sure that you're familiar with that. The other thing that I want to encourage is as soon as you're done participating in any one of these things, so even today you're done participating in this webinar, if you do have your CRA already, put this into the RACC portal to list that out and make sure to save any associated documentation to prove your attendance. That way, when the recertification window comes around and you have to submit all of that, you're not scrambling at that last hour trying to get all of that information pulled together to qualify for the 80 or 42 contact hours. And again, if you have all that documentation and should you be selected for an audit or verification of your contact hours, you've already got that saved away. You can just quickly, put that into a zip file or share a link to your online drive to RACC, and they'll be able to quickly validate and verify that and get you recertified for another 3 years. And with that, I will turn it back over to Alyssa.
Thank you very much, Tyler. It's almost as if a lot of our normal job duties can easily qualify for that. So whatever we're doing at work, it can also be applicable to our contact hours. So let's chat about some links and resources here. I want to encourage everybody in the chat who hasn't provided so already to include some resources that you may not see here. We've already discussed the online practice test offered by RAC, which is 75 questions, 2 hours and $60, an absolute bargain. Then we have Quizlet, everybody's favorite study tool to be able to have a quick study, whether if it's 5 minutes or if you want to go on a study bender for 2 hours, Quizlet has everything. And then we have Aim Higher through University of Michigan, the Virginia Tech Study Team, and this is one of the courses that I've personally done in the past fall semester. And the CRA a day, the bite-sized information, is absolutely phenomenal. Especially there was one time I received a CRA a day. It was an informational part. I printed it out and I studied it, and then later on the day somebody asked me about it. So it's almost as if it was meant to be. The Texas A&M CRA prep course, the UT Austin CRA prep course, and everybody knows about the RAC CRA body of knowledge review session. But I would like to give a personal shout out to a source that's not listed here is Georgia Tech, which is hosted by Lee Broxton. I personally found that this was my favorite out of all of the resources that I've done because it was very informal and he made it very, very welcoming for anybody to ask questions. So please check out Georgia Tech. They are phenomenal at what they do. All right, so now I'm going to open this back up to all the presenters to share any last comments about key tips on our slide, aptly named Key Tips.
Thanks, Alyssa. I think the number one thing I did was join a study group. I think that was super helpful to understanding what was required from the body of knowledge and understanding what I had to do. And I think it really kept me on track with what I should be studying each week. So that would be my number one tip, would be to join a study group.
All right. So next, I would say that you definitely need to remain focused on why you're taking the exam, what motivated you to take it in the first place, where are you trying to get professionally? Is this a goal you set for yourself for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is? So I would say definitely remain focused on why you're taking the exam. And then kind of like we talked about before, make a study plan. Joining a study group really helps with that, but you need to have a plan because it's a lot of information. And even if you only work pre-award and or post-award, or you work in the central office or you work with sub-awards, you really just need to make a plan because there's no way in your job you're really touching every single thing that this exam covers. So you definitely need to make a study plan.
Yeah, and I think the tip I would suggest, just because I think we've been answering some questions on Quizlet flashcards, is just making sure that you're aware of the changes in uniform guidance. So a lot of the flashcard sets on Quizlet right now are kind of based on old UG. So make sure that you review I think the Council of Government Relations, NCURA, a number of organizations have put out documentation on the changes to uniform guidance. So just make sure you kind of jot those down. And then as you're working through flashcards, you can kind of see the differences because, you don't want to just make that small mistake due to the transition of uniform guidance starting in the 2025 exams.
Said those definitely are all great tips. I know personally for one of them that somebody told me very likely either in Georgia Tech or Virginia Tech, read through the answers first and perhaps read the question afterwards because you can kind of get a sense about what the question is going to offer based on the answers. There have been known to be a couple of red herrings as far as an answer that is not even needed or a part of a question that's not even needed. So reading everything instead of going immediately, oh, that's the answer, there could be a little bit of a wrench in that plan. All right, so now is the time for your questions. If you haven't done so, please feel free to put your pressing questions into the Q&A. In the meantime, let me address some questions that we've received in our registration survey. And this will be available to all of our panelists who would first like to answer. So how long were you in research administration, grants management before you considered the CRA? And for those of you who have already touched on this, you're more than welcome to reiterate your answer or maybe touch upon some part that you haven't discussed yet.
So I can take this one. So for myself, I was in research administration a little bit over 2 years before I was seriously considering taking the exam. And of course, I'd set a goal for myself. So we have to set institutional goals every year. So at my former institution, I set a goal for myself to take the exam and become certified. And I had been in for about 2 years. give or take. And then I ended up having to do that petition because I had only been working in research administration for a little over 2 years. So that requires some steps that we talked about earlier, but you can do this even if you don't have the 3 years experience. It just requires a couple extra steps.
Good. Touching on that too, just from saying from my personal experience, for me, when I plan to take it next year, May 2025, I will have cumulative almost 3 years of experience, not just in my position, but at jobs prior that I was in administrative work in our technology transfer and contracts office. So I know that I divvied up have experience that's not just for my job, but I'll be able to compile it up and then put it into a letter for my superiors or my supervisors to send to REC saying Alyssa has the relevant amount of knowledge. So let me quickly just touch on, because it does show that in our Q&A we had our great panelists do a lot of behind the scenes answering, which is fantastic. I wanted to open up to another question of what are the most common challenges candidates face when preparing for the CRA exam, and how can I overcome them? And I know that we've already touched on perhaps some anxiety or some perhaps getting to the exam portal, but did you face any roadblocks or challenges in your pathway to getting certified as a CRA?
Yeah, I can take this one. I think in my experience, at least, the most common challenge is just making sure that you carve out the time and dedicate the time that you need to study. Again, you are solely responsible for your studying, right? No one else is going to hold you accountable to that. So you have to be very self-disciplined to make sure that you're going into that exam as confident as you can be. So again, if that's making sure that you're joining a study group and sort of honoring that time that that study group is in, making sure that you're not double booking meetings during that time. Maybe you use the last hour of a day once a week or so to study for the exam, or there's a time of the day that is pretty slow for you in your office. So schedule time on your calendar, dedicate that, and make sure you stick to that. And if you are reward driven, all right, figure out how you can reward yourself for sticking to your study schedule. Kind of all these just different little tricks or methods to make sure that you're sticking to that sort of a self-assigned study schedule is going to be super important.
I completely agree with what Tyler was saying. I think sticking to your study schedule also helps with not feeling burnt out on the studying, because it is so much information that you are trying to get through. So I think just sticking to your study schedule, having those resources, talking to colleagues that are going through the exact same process. And then also in terms of burnout, once you get into the exam room, going in with a plan of, if you wanted to take breaks or how you're going to just process going through the 200 questions, I think is really helpful so you don't feel burnt out when you're in the exam.
That's a really good idea, Katie. I just saw into the Q&A a question I would like to open up to anybody who would like to answer. If an anonymous attendee would like to take the May test, where do I need to register for it? If anybody would like to put into a link or discuss here, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so the application deadline for the May 2025 CRA exam is April 9th, 2025. We'll put that in the chat, as well as it's available on the exam schedule link. So we'll send that out and it's answered. So again, May test, you have to apply or register for it or apply before it by April 9th.
Perfectly done. I know that I personally have that on my calendar because I personally wanted to go for the May 2025 exam, and I would hate to get it at 11:59, 12:01 comes around and gotta get to the next one. Definitely have that on your calendar as far as the deadline of when to register. So
One more
for,
thing.
I'll add
oh yeah,
one
go
thing
for
to
it.
that.
Sorry.
I wanted to make sure I
Oh.
was confident before I registered to take the exam because I didn't want to be wasting the $400. So I took the RAC practice exam right before I registered. And when I got almost every question correct, I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I registered to take the actual exam. So if you're feeling a little bit uneasy, if you're ready to go for that May deadline, just do the practice exam first and see how you do. And if you do well, then register to take the exam.
One more quick thing I wanted to add is if you will be using institutional resources, whether that's like if there's an education, tuition reimbursement, certification reimbursement, you need to look at the stipulations for that in terms of timing, because a lot of times you have to submit that information well in advance and get it approved before you're actually applying and paying for the exam. So just pay attention to those things. If your department is just saying they're going to pay for it, that's a little different. But if you're trying to use any type of tuition reimbursement, a lot of those programs are very strict, and actually wasn't successful because of the strict deadlines getting the institutional support for the exam. So definitely pay attention to those things before you register, because if you don't meet those those timelines, then you may not be able to be reimbursed for that exam or the body of knowledge, the practice exam that RAC offers as well.
Much to Allison and Katie for popping in with their perspectives too. That was exceptionally valuable for information. One question that actually did pop in my mind as moderator, has anybody taken the, I believe it's an 8-hour study session that is offered through RAC, either virtually and in person?
Yeah, so I actually did the body of knowledge review with RAC. It was a lot because I ended up having to take that day off because it's not usually on the weekends, it's usually on a weekday. So I did have to take that day off so that I could do that do that review session. And what I will say, that's another thing that I did this time around that I didn't do the first time around. And I will say that it was very helpful in terms of identifying those knowledge gaps. One thing about the body of knowledge review is it's offered at a lot of the annual meetings that the regions have. So you may be able to take that exam while you're at your regional meeting next year, because they're all over for this year. But there also are virtual options as well. So mine was virtual, but if for some reason you want to do that in person because you need to do it in person, those options are available as well. But it was very, very helpful to me to kind of identify those knowledge gaps and then show kind of what I really needed to hone in and focus on this next time around.
Eight hours a day, it feels like going back to school all over again. So for, how about one more question? What was the job market like after being CRA certified? Did you by chance know if you were browsing for other jobs, it did say that they preferred CRA certification, or if it was required for CRA certification? Did you by chance notice, now that you have the CRA certification, that it seemed to be everywhere? What is everybody's opinion?
I can jump in because I have recently changed positions. As of about 9 days ago, I joined Attain Partners, and prior to that, I was with the University of Connecticut. So I was on the job market for a little bit, and I think a large number of positions are at least indicating that the CRA or CPRA or CFRA are preferred qualifications. They want to see that, again, you've gone through a process that has verified your experience and knowledge base. And again, there's probably no better mechanism than the RAC designations. And again, I think I had previously mentioned earlier in the webinar, I think it's a item on your resume that is almost certain to get your foot in the door if you meet all of the other requirements. So, basic levels of experience, if there's an education requirement, those types of things. The CRA is going to set you apart from other candidates who maybe don't have that designation. So I have no qualms or regrets about studying for it, and going through the process of maintaining contact hours to ensure that I meet the recertification requirements is a really easy and frankly intriguing requirement to make sure that I keep that up.
So I'll add to that, as I recently transitioned as well, almost 3 months ago. So I'm now at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, and I was previously at Baylor College of Medicine for just shy of 4 years. And I definitely think that when I was applying for jobs, because once you have a certain number of years of experience as well as a certification, you're looking at different positions than you would have been looking at when you first started. So the CRA certification was definitely mentioned in quite a few positions that I applied for and interviewed for. And this was probably the quickest hiring process that I've ever been through in terms of applying, interviewing, and getting offers. So I know that it definitely made a difference. I started applying in July. I had offers by August. And that's, I mean, early July, had offers by August, and accepted, I think it was like end of August or something. But it was a very quick process. And like Tyler mentioned, I mean, it came up in every single interview. It was, oh my gosh, congratulations. This is such a high achievement. This is something that I wanted to do for myself. And these are people that are seasoned professionals that had been in research administration for a long time. And it came up multiple times. What did you do? How did you study? How did you do this? So I definitely think that it is very marketable, and it definitely helps. Whether you're just trying to move up in your institution, I know a lot of people that passed and that was what they needed to get their promotion at my former institution. So it helped a lot of people that I know just move up where they were, but it also helps you get a job elsewhere if you are looking to leave your institution as well.
That was fantastic, Katie. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who asked such great questions in the webinar. It is that time to end our compelling Q&A because we are nearing the end of today's webinar. I'd like to say it was truly a pleasure and a privilege to serve as today's moderator. And it was wonderful getting to know my esteemed colleagues. And I wish everybody congratulations on their CRA certification, either if you just got it or if it was 5 years ago. Congratulations. I wish everyone a happy holiday season and a happy new year filled with good news of certification for everybody in this webinar.